All right, team, I got 3 variations for you to train your hamstrings if you are working out at home. Variation number 1 is to do a lying dumbbell hamstring curl. So if you have a flat bench at home, you have some dumbbells, you're golden to still make sure that you're targeting the hamstrings. So we're gonna go ahead and grab a dumbbell, and we're gonna be at the edge of our bench here. I typically will just put the dumbbell on the floor, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the dumbbell with our feet and perform a lying hamstring curl. So we're gonna go ahead, get into position, kind of bring our feet close together and grab the dumbbell with our ankles. As you can see, it might be a little bit awkward at first, so maybe just put it into position like that. And like I said, might be a little uncomfortable at first, but you will get used to it. So you can see there that the dumbbell is in a pretty good position there, and we're gonna kind of come down. And I typically will just have my elbows up a little bit so I'm in a bit of a plank position, but make sure that you keep your hips driving into the bench. We're gonna go ahead and flex our knees. As you can see, not working out very well. So let's see what else we can do. Okay, let's see if that'll stay in position again. There we go. Go ahead and flex our knees and just kind of come up like that. Typically don't need much more than about a 90-degree angle. I can actually feel that pretty good in my hamstrings, even though the dumbbell is moving a little bit. So you might have to really just squeeze your legs together and make sure that the dumbbell's not moving too much, but it is sliding a little bit here, but that's okay. It's not a perfect situation, but I can actually still feel that pretty good in my hamstring. So you might not get as much of a range of motion, but like I said, they still feel pretty decent. If you don't have a bench, you can easily do that on the ground as well. But a different variation for the lying hamstring curls, I'm gonna show you guys. If you either have a cable machine, if not bands, I find are gonna work obviously a little bit better than dumbbells, and you'll see in just a second here. Let's go ahead and bring our bench over to our cables. If you don't have cables at home, you can easily do this with some bands as well. So if you do have an at-home gym, I do recommend you invest into some ankle straps so that way you can use them for hamstring curls, whether or not you're using cables or you're using bands. It's just gonna help increase stability so that way you're not really having that issue like you guys saw with the dumbbells moving up and down my calves when we're trying to do the lying hamstring curl. So again, if you have some cables, even better, but let's go ahead here. Now we are gonna do just a single leg. I'm gonna strap in, make sure that you bring the cables down all the way on the pulley system. We're gonna come down again on the bench, kind of come forward a little bit here, and then we're gonna get ourselves into position and go ahead, make sure those hips stay down. And we're gonna curl. Oh man, that's actually like way better than the dumbbells. So we're gonna go ahead and curl, and that's all the range of motion that you really need when it comes to that. So many people try to kick their butts. You really don't need your foot touching your butt. Often when that happens, people's hips will come off of the bench. So just make sure it's a smaller range of motion like that, but you're fully extending your knee at the bottom there, so that way you can ensure that you are getting a full range of motion. Well, obviously you would switch sides, but let's go over what you would do if you don't have cables, right? So this is where having some bands come into play are gonna be very helpful as well too. So you do wanna try to find somewhere to anchor the bands. Quite often you can do it around like a doorknob or something like that, but we're lucky enough that we have this. So we are just gonna bring our band around. You can hook in with both, or you can tie it and only use one. If you use both, it's gonna be more challenging, but as you can see here with the band, we can easily hook this into my ankle straps. And then we're gonna, again, perform the lying leg curl, but with a band this time. We're gonna come down, and as you can see there, I really need to move the bench way further forward in order to create some more tension in the bands. Obviously, like when you're training at home, you do have to get creative. You know, initially the setup may be a little bit frustrating, but once you find your flow, if you can't get to the gym and training at home is just more practical for you, you have to be okay with spending this time working out some of the kinks to figure out what's gonna work for you. So as you can see here, look at that increased tension. That's gonna be way better now that we're a lot further forward when we go to perform the lying hamstring curl. So same range of motion here, fully extending that knee, curling up, making sure that when you're curling up, your hips aren't coming up like this. Make sure that butt and your hips stay glued to the bench, and the only joint that should be moving is your knee joint. So you're focusing on flexing your knee and really extending it for a full range of motion, and that's gonna hit your hamstrings. Pretty good, actually. All right, so that's the lying hamstring curl. Let's do a seated hamstring curl now. I personally like the seated hamstring curl way more than the lying hamstring curl, and I have an old video about this, but the biggest reason is because it puts your hips in a flexed position, so your starting position of your hamstrings are way more lengthened in comparison to when you're lying down because your hips aren't flexed. You're lying down where if you look like this is how I would look lying down. Your hips are extended. So when your starting position for your hamstrings, where your hips are in a flexed position, and then your knee joint is in an extended position, your hamstrings are much more lengthened, which is gonna help target them a lot more. And I find if you're training at home, doing the seated hamstring curl is a little bit better, not so awkward in comparison to the lying hamstring curl. So pretty similar setup. However, the starting position of the cables are gonna need to be a lot higher. So I'll demonstrate it with the cables first, and then we'll do the band and be on your way. So I typically like to have the cables pretty much like chest height. So even that is probably a little bit too high. And that's just due to experience. That's due to me just like spending that time trying to work out the kinks of doing exercises like this at home. So we're gonna go ahead and get our cable clicked into place. And we're gonna sit back on the bench, pull some of that tension out of the cable, and we're gonna lean a little bit forward and really just grab into the bench so that way your torso is staying in a neutral position and it's not deviating while you go to do the seated cable curl. So we're just gonna hold the bench like this, and we're gonna curl our leg down. Now this is a pretty good height for me. Depending on the height of your bench, you might need to actually elevate yourself. So when you curl down without your thigh like coming up off of the bench, make sure it's glued into the bench. If you find that your foot is hitting the floor, like right here, my foot's not hitting the floor, but if you find that your foot is hitting the floor right there, indication that you need to elevate yourself. So I would grab some plates or an aerobic step, so just to increase your height. So you can grab like a step like this if you want, and that way, make sure it's nice and sturdy. You're not gonna like tip over or anything like that, but see, now you can tell that I'm in a higher position, so that way, when I go to perform the cable curl, my foot is not gonna hit the ground at all. So that's another way that you can look at doing it for the seated hamstring curl, but make sure that your leg is staying neutral. Again, the only joint that should be moving is your knee joint. You're not like trying to like swing forward like this to bring it down. Keep that torso forward just a little bit, but make sure it's not moving as a way to curl the weight. So that's how you would do it if you have cables. Again, as I'm sure you can probably expect, very similar if you have bands. You just kind of want to anchor it around something that's going to be a little bit higher in comparison to the lying curls. So it's a little bit higher. I'm going to go ahead, hook that into our ankle straps, and we'll get into position. So same kind of issue again. There's quite a bit of flexibility left in the band, where unfortunately I'm probably gonna have to move the bench back. There we go. Like, look at how much tension is created now in there. So as their starting position, there's still quite a good of a tension. It's not like loosey-goosey or anything like that. So we're gonna go ahead and curl the band down. Make sure that our torso isn't moving. And that's how we are gonna do the seated hamstring curl with a band. So unless you have access to cables, there probably is going to be a point in time where you do outgrow your bands. So trying to grab bands that are higher in resistance, sometimes even using multiple bands, is a really great way to increase the amount of load that you are doing. But if you do find that at some point in time you are increasing the amount of reps that you are doing, where it's like 20, 30 reps and you're not taking those sets close to failure, it might be a good idea to consider either upgrading your home gym, maybe seeing if you can do like a leg day at a commercial gym, just so you have access to heavier weights. But if you're just starting out in a home gym can be very effective. You just have to be super intentional. You have to be patient with working out some of these kinks that you clearly saw with me doing this movement pattern. But you can actually be successful if you're working out at home. You just have to be patient and creative and intentional with your training. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. I plan to maybe do some more at-home exercise demonstrations, so make sure you guys leave a comment down below if that's something that you want to see. See you in the next one.